All right. So um, you sent over this article about high-masking autism, and yeah, we could tell you were ready to really dive deep into this.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's something that I think we all need to be talking about more.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever gotten the feeling like someone is putting on a performance in social situations?
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're following a script they don't really connect with.
Totally.
For some people, that's high masking, and it's especially common among autistic individuals.
Yeah, it's a fascinating aspect of neurodiversity, and it's something that is really often misunderstood.
Yeah.
High masking is essentially a coping mechanism where someone on the autism spectrum might suppress or camouflage their natural behaviors to better fit in socially.
So it's almost like they've become such experts at reading the room and playing the role that they think is kind of expected of them.
Precisely. And, while it might seem like they're navigating these social situations with ease,
Right.
what's often happening beneath the surface is so much more complex.
Oh, I bet.
They might be mirroring behaviors. They might be suppressing stims, like those repetitive movements or sounds that can be self-soothing for some, or even adopting speech patterns that don't feel natural to them.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about the effort that goes into masking stims before.
Oh, yeah.
This article that you shared talks about some of the myths surrounding high masking, and one that really stood out to me was this idea that people who are high masking are being fake or two-faced. That's got to be so hurtful.
It is incredibly hurtful, and it completely misses the mark.
Yeah.
High masking isn't about being intentionally deceptive. It's often a survival tactic in a world that really struggles to understand and accept neurodiversity.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so imagine constantly feeling like you have to perform just to be accepted.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's like having to be on all the time.
Exactly.
No wonder this article talks about the emotional toll that masking can take.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine the exhaustion of being hypervigilant and constantly monitoring your every move, your every word in social situations.
Yeah.
It can be so draining and can lead to a lot of anxiety, burnout, even depression.
And then it creates this really sad paradox where someone can appear so socially adept, but internally they are battling these immense pressures.
Right. It's invisible,
Yeah.
so it often goes unnoticed.
Yeah, it's invisible labor. Nobody sees it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand this, because if their struggles are hidden, they might not be receiving the support that they need.
Yeah, and because you can't see it, it makes it difficult, I think, for a lot of people to understand why someone wouldn't just be themselves.
Right.
But the truth is, unmasking can feel incredibly risky.
Absolutely. Especially when you've spent years building up those protective barriers.
Yeah, it's got to be like
Yeah.
taking off armor that you've been wearing for so long that it feels like it's a part of you.
Right.
There's a real vulnerability there.
Yeah, vulnerability can be terrifying, especially in a world that, doesn't always celebrate being different.
That's true.
I know this article you shared mentioned a study about the long-term impact of masking. And one thing that really stood out to me was the link between masking and difficulty forming genuine connections with others.
Yeah, because how can you build those really meaningful relationships if you're not showing up authentically?
Exactly. It's a significant challenge, and people who mask might find themselves constantly second-guessing themselves,
Okay.
wondering if they're being perceived the right way instead of just being present in the moment.
Right, just like enjoying the moment for what it is.
Exactly. It can be so isolating.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly exhausting.
It is.
This article also talks about how masking can even lead to a delayed autism diagnosis.
Absolutely.
Because if you're so good at it.
Right, because they've become so good at masking, those struggles might be mistaken for something else entirely, like social anxiety or introversion.
Oh, yeah.
And sadly, this can really delay access to the support and resources that could make such a big difference in their lives.
So how do we shift from misunderstanding to a place of genuine support then?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it starts with awareness,
Okay.
with really understanding the challenges faced by high-masking individuals.
Yeah.
And it requires empathy,
Yeah.
really trying to see the world from their perspective, even if their experience is completely different from our own.
Easier said than done
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Oh, definitely.
So where do we even begin?
Yeah.
That is a really good question because it does seem like such a monumental task,
It is.
creating a world where everybody feels understood.
Yeah.
So where do we even start? What are some things that we can all do, to better support people in our lives who might be high masking?
Well, I think a good place to begin is just being more mindful of our own assumptions about how someone on the autism spectrum should behave.
Okay.
We have these very specific ideas about what autism looks like,
Right.
and those expectations can be really, really limiting.
Yeah, so being more open to the idea that autism can look a lot of different ways, even if it doesn't fit the kind of traditional stereotypes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, beyond that, it's about fostering environments where people feel safe to be themselves.
Okay.
Whether they choose to mask or unmask in those moments, and that might look like, creating sensory-friendly spaces,
Okay.
encouraging more open communication, or just being really patient and understanding when someone needs to take a step back.
Yeah.
They need a break from all the social interaction.
Yeah, it's almost like giving people permission to take up space in a way that feels authentic to who they are.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And this article highlighted this one story about an individual who finally felt safe enough to unmask in a support group setting.
Okay.
And they described it as finally being able to exhale after holding their breath for years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That really puts it into perspective, huh?
Yeah.
That's a lot of energy going into just keeping up appearances.
It is a huge expenditure of energy. And the thing is, when someone feels accepted for who they truly are, they can actually start to redirect that energy towards things that actually bring them joy and fulfillment.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, is there one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will take from this conversation?
I think the biggest one is just remembering that high masking is a complex and deeply personal experience.
Okay.
It's not our place to judge why someone might choose to mask or unmask, but rather to create a world where they feel safe and supported in their choices, whatever those choices might be.
Really beautifully said.
Mhm.
So, listener, as you move through your day-to-day life, think about the people that you interact with and how this new understanding of high masking might shift your perspective a little. Could it open your eyes to some of the unseen struggles of those around you? And more importantly, how can you be a part of creating a world that embraces authenticity in all its beautiful forms? This has been a really insightful deep dive. I really appreciate you sharing this article with me.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a really important conversation. And until next time, keep asking those important questions and keep diving deep.